Hello and welcome to the Learning Love Podcast, brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation, helping people transform how they love, live, and lead. I'm your host, Dr. Mark A. Hicks, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we spend some time learning love.
Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions. And one of the reasons we have so many questions is because we come from families. Now let me let you in on a little secret. Families are nuts. All of them. All of them are nuts. Some are just more functional than others. We're going for functional. But what I mean when I say every family is nuts is that even if you come from a healthy, happy, thriving family, which is what we want, every family is a little quirky. Every family has its own brand of odd. Every family is just a little bit weird. And it works for them. If it's a healthy family, it works. And it's perfectly fine. And it's to be celebrated that you have a healthy family. The problem is, when you go out into the world, you find other people from other healthy families that also have their own particular brand of odd and quirky and weird. And sometimes, even though you both come from healthy families, it's difficult to kind of bring all that together. We live in a world where people just kind of clash, not because they're bad people. We live in a world where even within marriages, sometimes we clash, not because we're bad people, not because we have a bad marriage, but we both came from families that had their own way of doing things. And when you grow up in a family, you assume as a child that is normal, whatever it is, that's the normal way of doing things. And you get used to doing that, and it just becomes second nature. The way you interact just becomes the way you are because that's the way you were raised. If you were raised in a healthy background, if you were raised by healthy parents that treated you well, nothing at all wrong with that. But still, you'll have to understand that you may marry someone, you may have friends, you may have coworkers that also come from healthy families that have their own particular brand of weird, and it might not mesh with yours. That we may look at one another and think, why are you acting that way? When the way they're acting is perfectly normal to them because that's the way things worked in their family. Let me give you a quick example. I had one person tell me one time that they had a coworker that they liked fine. They seemed to be good people. It wasn't anything personal, but they could not get along because one of them came from a family where if there was conflict, it was handled quietly. Everyone went to their own rooms, or they took a walk, or they went somewhere quiet and they thought through it. And very often they thought, this is not worth fighting about. And so they let it go. And if they did think, this is something I need to confront, they took their time, they thought through it, they decided how they were going to handle it, and they came out and had a conversation. That's the way things were handled. Now, they had a coworker who in his family, it was a little different. They wore their emotions on their sleeve. They might yell, they might raise their voices at times, they might get excited, they might get upset. But at the end of it, everybody loved each other. There were no secrets. Everything was out in the open. They had everything off of their chest. They got to vent their emotions, so there wasn't anything bottled up. Everybody knew where everybody else stood, and everybody came away loving each other no matter what. That's the way things were. And so they got in the staff meeting, and if there was a conflict, he would raise his voice, he would get agitated, he would let everybody know where he stood, and she didn't know how to handle that. She wanted to kind of retreat and think through things and ponder things and come up with a solution if there was a conflict. They didn't get along at all. But it wasn't because they were bad people. It was because they came from different family backgrounds. And that's the way life is. We might even marry a person that's very different from us because the way they do things when we're dating might seem like a breath of fresh air. But it might also cause some conflict once we get into daily life. It may seem nice for an extrovert to marry an introvert because, it just kind of seems like that, as I said, it's a breath of fresh air. It feels good for the introvert to kind of get out a little bit and to not have to do that themselves, to sort of ride the coattails of their extrovert partner. And an extrovert might think, it's kind of nice to be quiet sometimes. This is interesting. I kind of like the idea that my partner helps me be quiet sometimes. But then in daily life, we start to have a little conflict because one of us wants to go out all the time and the other wants to stay home and just watch a movie. These are natural things that usually develop in our childhood and very often from our family. So, whether it's a personality issue or whether it's something we were taught in our families, we come from different backgrounds, and that's sometimes going to clash, even if we're all basically healthy people. Now, that's best case scenario. From there, we have toxic families, abusive families, dysfunction of all kinds that can make it very difficult to know how to interact in a healthy way. And so, if we need to overcome some things from our family background, we need to change the way we're doing things in order to get along at work or in friendships or especially in our marriages. If we need to readdress some things from our family that may have been toxic, may have been dysfunctional, or may have been just fine and not a thing in the world wrong with it, but it's just not working for us in our new family as an adult. It worked for us in our family of origin as a child, but it does not work now in our marriage. It's not working in our adult family with spouse and children, and we need to make some adjustments. And that's okay. The first thing is to understand there's nothing wrong with that. We all have to make adjustments. I've spent all this time already in this episode talking about how we all come from some kind of weird. And that's the best case scenario. We may come from toxic or abusive, and certainly and absolutely have to make changes in that case. And so we need to understand it's okay. It's expected. We all need to look at the changes we need to make from the way we were raised in order to get along at work or with neighbors or with friends, and especially in our marriages and with our children. We need to make sure we are doing what we need to do to make the adjustments in our new situation as an adult, not just keep relying on what felt normal to us in childhood. There is no such thing as a normal family. Every family is unique. And as we get into our relationships as an adult, we can't just go on autopilot. We can't just do what came natural as a child. We can't just do what our parents did, and it's not good enough to say, well, that's just the way I was raised. Yes, you were raised that way. That felt normal. That felt the way life was, but it's not. No one has a monopoly on normal. No family is normal. We all have to make adjustments. So the first skill to develop, if we are going to really get along with one another, is to understand we all have to make adjustments. If we want to get along in our families, as adults, if we want to get along with our friends and neighbors and coworkers, we have to make adjustments from how we were raised and do things a little different. And that's okay. Nothing at all wrong with that. We don't have to be stubborn and hold on to the way things were. We're not betraying our family. It can feel like that maybe, but we're not. We're not betraying our family. We're just learning relationship skills. We learn certain ones as a family growing up, and we need new ones as we go along. We always are developing, learning how to love. And so once we realize that we need to make adjustments, we need to obviously figure out what those are. What's working for us and what's not. That's called self-awareness. It's a rare quality nowadays, it seems like. We don't really look at ourselves. It's really easy to pick out the faults in other people. It's really easy to look at other folks and know what they need to do differently. But we struggle to look at ourselves. We struggle to look and see this is where I need to change. That may take some counseling. That might take getting a relationship coach. but it will certainly take some thought. It will certainly take some time to think through it and decide what's not working for me. Again, there's no shame in this. Just because it's not working doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. You may have worked just fine in the past, but if we want good relationships, we can't expect our family's standard to translate everywhere all the time. And if you know you came from an unhealthy family, then certainly you need to make changes. But even if you came from a healthy family, as I said, we all have to adjust. No shame in that at all. Pick out what's not working. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It just means it's not working now. Once you start realizing that and you want to make changes, there is something very important to do. Realize it's going to take some time and you're not going to change it instantly, even if you're very aware of it, even if it's obvious that you need to change some area of your life. For instance, let's imagine you come from a family that has a habit of being kind of snippy. You know, they make wisecracks and insults, and it's all fun and games. It's all kind of a joke, but somebody's always coming back with something harsh. You say something to someone that, you didn't mean anything by it, but they took it the wrong way, or they were in a bad mood and they just snap right back at you. Or you said something that maybe was a little bit harsh and they come back with something a whole lot harsh. And a lot of families do that. They just get into a rhythm, a habit of being harsh with one another, of saying things in such a way that are really snippy, that are snarky, and even insulting. And again, it can be just blowing off steam. It can be assumed that it's in humor, just picking on each other with the idea that I'll pick on you because I love you. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't insult you. And so some families just sort of get into that mode. And again, if that works for you, if this insult comedy thing is something that your family did, if snapping at each other to make sure that you were heard is just something your family did, okay, we don't need to judge that. If it worked for your family and you were basically a healthy family that got along with one another, and that was one of the ways that you sort of interacted and communicated, okay. Every family has its own way of doing things. But your spouse may not be able to go every day with some sort of new insult. Your spouse may not be able to handle it every time something's said and you come back with something snarky or something insulting or something snippy or harsh. The point is, we may have something there we need to change that worked in our family growing up but doesn't work now. And when we realize that, we're not going to be able to change it immediately. It's going to just come out. It's going to be so natural. It's just going to come out. But there's a trick to this. When you start paying attention and those things come out, you usually won't be able to catch it before it comes out when you first start trying to change. It will just pop out because it feels natural. So if you find yourself saying things instantly in the moment that are not consistent with what you want to do now, don't beat yourself up. Don't think you're failing. Don't get all upset because that came out. Correct it. The way to make change is to start realizing that you're doing those things and correcting it immediately. It'll pop out before you even realize that you've said it. It will just come out instinctively. That's okay. Correct it. Okay. All right. What I should have said is, and practice it. When you catch yourself doing it, go back and say, okay, what I needed to say there was, what I wish I had said there was, and practice it. Tell people what you wish you had said if you had caught it beforehand. Doing that sort of retrains our brain. You're just doing it because you were trained that way as a child, and your brain got trained that way. Again, not your fault, nothing wrong with it. But if we want to retrain it, we have to retrain our brain to think a different way, not just to pop out with what was instinctive. And so say, I wish I had said something different there. Let me try that again. And then say it differently. Make that change. Let yourself hear yourself saying those things differently, and you'll get used to it. Over time, you'll start catching it before you say it. Your brain will get into this place of, okay, which one are we doing? Are we going with the thing that we did as a child, or are we going with this thing we've been practicing lately? Your brain will slow down enough because there'll be two tracks in your brain now, not just that instinctive thing that pops out, but there'll be another track you've been practicing lately. And your brain will say, okay, which one we taking? And you'll start catching it beforehand, and it will become more and more natural. Now, it doesn't mean that forever and always you'll never pop out with that thing that came as a child, and that's okay. But you can train your brain to do things differently. There could be a million examples here of things we learned as a child in a family that worked just fine in our families, but it's not working now. Whatever it is, be aware of it, decide to change it, maybe enlist the help of people to point it out to you. Be aware when it comes out, and it will. Don't feel bad about it. Don't beat yourself up. It's okay. It's very natural. But practice the new line. Practice the new response, the new wording that you wish you had used, and your brain will grow accustomed to that. It will slow down a notch over time, and it will basically begin to wonder which path you're going to take, which road we're going down. And then you can decide. You'll become more self-aware, and you won't have to make corrections anymore. Eventually, you'll have a new pattern of this is how I respond. This is not about guilt. This is not about saying bad things about your family or how you were raised. It's just that the world is complicated. Everybody comes from a different kind of family. And so things that worked for you before may not work now. That's okay. You have the power to retrain how you communicate, how your brain functions, how you think through those conversations, and make new choices. If you do that, it'll help you build those healthy relationships you want. And that's my thoughts this week as we're working to build those healthy, happy, thriving relationships that we all want, need, and deserve. Before we sign off today, I want to invite you to go to my YouTube channel because I have a brand new show. I'm still the host here at the Learning Love Podcast, but I also have a show called Today's Insight on YouTube at Mark A. Hicks Video. That's Mark A. Hicks Video. Today's Insight is a show about the news, world events, cultural issues, and I react to those, but not as news commentary. I react to the events that we are facing in the world today through a lens of compassion, connection, decency, and love. How do we look at the chaos of the world we live in and all the challenges we face and be decent people anyway? How do we understand the world and how to be a decent person in the midst of it? So go to YouTube at Mark A. Hicks Video and check it out. Thank you for listening this week. Until next week, love well, everyone.